Hello and welcome to Moneylife News and Views. I'm Debashis Basu. Last Thursday, the Central Bureau of Investigation filed a charge sheet against Chitra Ramkrishna, who is the former CEO of National Stock Exchange, and also Anand Subramanian, who was the group operating officer, in connection with the co-location scam of the National Stock Exchange. The charge sheet named the two for allegedly providing preferential access to a select group of brokers and unfair access to NSE's trading system. And the charge sheet also has alleged that key information such as NSE's organizational structure, dividend scenario, financial results, human resources, and all the other internal information has been shared with a particular email ID between 2013 and 2016. It's an external email ID under the domain yahoo.com. Now, in 2013, Mr. Ramkrishna became the CEO of NSE and immediately had inducted Subramanian as her number 2. It may be recalled that a Sebi order in February 22, that is just a few months ago, documented how, in her view, the world's largest derivatives exchange, that is the National Stock Exchange, was being run by the blessings of a Himalayan yogi who was communicating with her through that email ID. To those familiar with this bizarre case, it may seem that CBI is trying to duplicate the work which is already done by Securities and Exchange Board of India for so many years. All the investigation started sometime in 2015, late 2015. Sebi had investigated the fraud or got it investigated by external agencies, issued show cause notices, and then final orders in little drips over 4 years. But Sebi actually let off the main actors in the scam with minor raps. The show cause notices primarily blamed Ravi Narayan, who was before Chitra, the CEO and MD, that is till March 2013. Mr. Ramkrishna, who held the post from 2013 to late, that is December 2016, and Subramanian Anand also. Sebi said it was the laxity and the dereliction of duty that led to the brokerage firm, for instance, OPG Securities, getting preferential access to select servers day after day. There are other people who got preferential access, but they have also been let off. Sebi also issued a supplementary show cause notice on NSE's inconsistent responses, as well as poor procedures, policies, and documentation. And yet, Sebi was unable to fix the accountability of specific persons or quantify all the illegal gains by brokers who had such unfair and preferential access. Though Sebi is armed with enormous policing powers, it relied entirely almost on the forensic audit that it asked NSE itself to conduct. Naturally, the show cause notices have no hard evidence about who was actually responsible for things going so wrong at NSE's co-location. Sebi interrogated NSE officials, brokers, and others, and then recorded a series of bland and evasive answers by the NSE's top brass, including Ravi Narayan and Chitra Ramkrishna, who had exercised tight control over the exchange for the last 20 years. Their answers to Sebi's questions typically were, can't remember, department heads would know it, or that they would have ensured compliance. Ms. Ramkrishna projected herself as an expert in technology in media interviews, but at the interrogation, deflected all responsibility to the technology heads. Questions about fraudulent preferential access were brushed off as operational or technical issues, which she did not know anything about. This kind of buck passing appears outrageous, given that Ms. Ramkrishna made 44 crore in little over 3 years as MD and CEO of NSE. She earned around 18 crore in the last 8 months in office before resigning in December 2016. Her salary more than doubled that year from a previous year's packages of 9 crore, even as the scam investigations were going on. When Ms. Ramkrishna quit NSE, her total remuneration was around 23 crore, including variable pay and perks. However, according to her, she was not accountable at all for anything going wrong for the rot at NSE. By the way, the NSE's boards and its technical advisors and very eminent personalities in NSE's boards had actually initially defended itself by saying that there was nothing wrong at NSE. There was no need for an investigation at all. Some of those directors still continue on the board. Mr. Narayan took the same stance, that I knew nothing and I'm not accountable. In other words, NSE's top brass had enormous upside and zero downside, same as the directors of NSE all these years. If you are big and influential, the price of getting caught in the securities market is insignificant. And then even if you get caught, you can easily challenge them in courts of law armed with very expensive and very powerful and influential lawyers. Will the CBI be able to do what Sebi has avoided doing? While Sebi has draconian powers of search, arrest, and freezing of assets, it did not use these powers in this case of enormous fraud and dereliction and misgovernance. It also did not frame charges of fraud, which is very apparent. Sebi has repeatedly asked senior NSE officials to comment on whether their co-location policies take into account the principles of fair and equal access, since it did not focus on pinning responsibility and pinning fraud specifically. The answers it got were sheer obfuscation. These vague responses then formed the basis of Sebi's weak orders, which have now been promptly challenged by aggressive lawyers for NSE and its former top brass. If CBI wants to get at the truth, it has to cast its net wide, without fear and favor. It has to have long chats with current and former NSE and Sebi top brass, the NSE board members of the last few years, all of whom contributed to the Colo scam and or the investigation getting smothered by a web of legal and technical issues. According to a legal expert, by her own admission, Ms. Ramkrishna was acting on the instructions of unknown persons outside the exchange. This amounts to fraud under Sebi's provisions, but the regulator's order does not charge her with fraud and therefore gives her a big leeway. The fact is, unfair trading practices and rampant misgovernance at NSE amount to taking the entire nation for a ride, as also all listed companies, investors, and market intermediaries. It is the biggest issue we have ever faced in the securities market, where a sensitive and systemically important institution and first-line regulator was not only exploited by fraudsters, but functioned like a private fief. The only way this can be set right is by pinning responsibility on all the actors of the scam and all the yes men who supported them. Will CBI do what Sebi did not? That's a question we'll have to wait for an answer. If you like this video, please click on subscribe and do share and also like it. Thanks for watching.